that is why there is the focusing magnifying glass. It's also called Hex disease, and that's because who in the heck would want a 13-year-old chief, or you could say that it's Chief Heck, and that's her name. Do not get this confused with acantholysis, which is going to be the breakdown of the stratum spinosum. This is acanthosis, and that's Hex disease or focal epithelial hyperplasia. As you go to the next room on the right, this is kind of a continuation of verrucus vulgaris, which is across the hall. This isn't verrucus vulgaris, this is verrucus carcinoma. And so what we have is we have a very large car accident, kind of a multi-car pileup going on in this room. It's caused a massive traffic jam, and so all the traffic's moving very slowly, and there's a car with a gnome in it as well that's also involved with. So verrucus recticarum, and there's a car gnome that's also crashed in this. So verrucus carcinoma, and they wrecked on Reedy Ridge on the road. It was on its way to Reedy Ridge, and so there are Reedy Ridges seen in this as well, and it's a very large car accident, so it's much larger than squamous papilloma. That's one of the ways that you'd be able to tell the difference between the two. The next room on the right, you have to walk through. The doorway has massive hairs and hair follicles on the floor, and these massive hairs that you have to walk through to get through. It's very unusual. So you push your way through these massive hairs to get into the room, and you see a man with a giant cow head with spots all over it. He's got red hair, and his mouth is gaping open with his tongue hanging out. He's sitting on a toilet, and on his lap he's holding a Domino's pizza. He's got massive hands. He's holding a devil's trident, and behind the toilet there are two giant carrots that are planted in the ground that kind of look like plants growing out to decorate this area. He is observing another person with a giant cow head who is stabbing a lady with a trident in her neck and her breast. Okay, so what does this mean? So this is Cowden syndrome, or they have the gigantic cow head. It's also called multiple hamartoma syndrome. So they should have a stack of hammers as well that I'm going to add in now. Okay, I just added the lady that was being stabbed. She was holding a hammer, and they stabbed her for dropping the hammer multiple times. So there's multiple hamartomas, or Cowden syndrome. Big head. It involves the hair follicles. He's sitting on the toilet, so that's why he has diarrhea, and that is from intestinal polyps. They have a red hair because this happens on the gingiva. Their mouth is gaping open and their tongue's hanging out because it happens on it does happen in their mouth, it happens on their tongue, it happens on their gingiva. He's holding a Domino's pizza because it's autosomal dominant. It's a tumor that involves multiple facial hair follicle tumors. The cows kind of pox on their face, or little bumps on their face, a sandpapery texture. I'm actually going to make the floor of this room made out of sandpaper to help remind us of the sandpapery texture. So when you walk in, it's a very gritty floor. They have a large head, so they have macrocephaly. And this is one of the one of the diseases, one of the 4 diseases that has palmar and plantar keratosis. So that's why we have the 2 plantars that are carrots, and why his hands are huge. So the palms and his soles, they are going to have plantar and palmar keratosis. The lady is being stabbed in the neck and in the breast because this causes malignancy, and particularly in the breast and thyroids, the thyroid in the neck. So this is one that they would want to ask whether or not a sibling also has some of these. And a father or mother could also have it where it's autosomal dominant. So 50% of the siblings, he likes percentages, 50% of the siblings, 50% will have it. Okay, as we head down the hall, we veer to the left, and this change of direction is because we're going to be talking for a moment about things that do not happen in the mouth. So the next few are kind of grouped in an area where they don't happen in the mouth. And on the right of this hallway, there's going to be a little door that leads a back way to the cafe a lot, which is another condition that doesn't happen in the mouth. So that's a little connection there. On the first door on the right, when you walk in, it's kind of like there's a sumo wrestling match, but it's very quiet as we walk in. And this is pseudoepitheliomatous hyperplasia is the other name for a keratocanthoma. And so when you come walking in the door, that's door into this sumo match is lined with cans of carrots, canned carrots, keratocanthoma, and there's a sumo match going on in the middle, these hyper sumo wrestlers. So a pseudoepitheliomatous hyperplasia is the other name for keratocanthoma. It grows very fast, and then it grows as stationary, and then it goes through an involution phase all during the same period of time, 2 to 6 weeks, after which it's going to take 6 weeks to 6 months before it kind of gets crusty and falls off. Multiple keratocanthomas can be a sign of malignancy, I believe. None of the people, like I said, it's quiet. So in here, none of the people have mouths. And that's because this does not occur in the oral cavity. It's related to hair follicles, which is also like Cowden's disease, so there's a connection there. But Cowden can occur in the mouth, where pseudoepitheliomatous hyperplasia does not. Keratocanthomas do not occur in the mouth. They can occur on the lips, and they can occur on both the upper and the lower lips. There's no difference there. And that's why at this place, at this match, there's a concessions guy walking around selling wax lips. And that's on both upper and lower. So a full set of lips can happen on either upper or lower. It looks like cancer. It invades like cancer, but it's not cancer. One of the things you can tell the difference is that this grows a lot faster than cancer does, and it does have a connective tissue core, or a let me see. Okay, so not so much connective tissue core, but a central plug of keratin, and that's why there's on the mat that the sumo wrestlers are wrestling on, there's a carrot plug in the middle of it. There's also a track that goes around the mat where the sumo wrestlers are fighting, and that's for the other sumo wrestlers who are training. They move around the track very fast. They're very fast growing, and said multiple keratocanthomas can be a sign of systemic malignancy. So there's a little clone machine with a little devil trident on it again to represent malignancy, and it's popping out little clones. So there's multiple of them. So these multiple clones are the little sumo wrestlers that are going to be growing up to fight. And there is also a little box with a knife in it for the excision, and that's going to be how you treat it. So this can look like cancer, but it grows faster. It invades kind of in the same way, where it involutes in the center with a keratinized plug. And it can look like Cowden's, but it does not happen in the mouth. Keratocanthoma are also described as being firm, fleshy lesion as a sessile epithelial growth. And so a little connection there is across the hall, we're going to be talking about Uncle Sessile. And so Uncle Sessile also used to be a sumo wrestler, to kind of remember that those sumo wrestlers is a sessile lesion. Okay. Keratocanthoma are idiopathic. They don't know what causes it. So across the hall, we've got Uncle Sessile's room, who used to be a sumo wrestler. Uncle Sessile, it's his birthday. For his birthday, he's frying up his favorite seahorse and carrots. So this is seborrheic keratosis, or seahorse carrots, and he's frying those up. This is a friable lesion. Uncle Sessile is sitting by the window. He's a great guy, Uncle Sessile. So it's a sessile lesion. He's a great guy. He's got a halo over his head. The halo means he's not going to be malignant. He's holding a cake in his lap, and the cake is for his 40th birthday, and it's got candles on it, or waxy candles. It can also be a waxy or friable lesion. The color of the cake, it's pink and white frosting, and it's brown inside with the chocolate. So the lesion can be pink, white, or brown. And he's holding a carrot because he loves carrots, and he's sitting by the window. There's sunlight coming in. So this is can be caused by UV light, genetic predisposition, and UV light can cause these types of lesions to appear, and a lot of times they're on old people's heads. Said it's exophytic and it's sessile. He's pointing with his carrot over to the dance area for his birthday. And so this is where you can get hyper, and he's pointing over there with his carrot. So this is hyperkeratosis. There's acanthosis. I'm going to have the Uncle Sessile over on the dance floor, and he's holding a candle. And I'm going to change the candle to represent acanthosis. So I'll talk about that in just a second. But and they're dancing on a mat, kind of like a twister mat, but instead of twister, there's a picture of Papa Smurf on there on the mat. So it's a papillomatus, hyperkeratosis, and acanthosis. So he's holding a candle, dancing on a Papa Smurf mat, and they're pointing over there with a carrot where you can get hyper. And instead of a disco ball, what they have is a Death Star hanging there. And so it's a base. The base is it's the bad guy's base. And so the lesion is basaloid cells with hyperkeratosis. Acanthosis, he's holding a candle. Papillomatosis. And so Uncle Sessile's a great guy, but he's got something messed up in his closet. So in the shower, you don't know this, but there's a dead person in the shower, and that's because if you have a shower of seborrheic keratosis showing up all over your body, or the sign of lesser trellat is what it's called. If they start showing up all over the place, all over your back, that's because you have stomach cancer. So there's a dead person in the shower with a devil trident through his stomach. And that is seborrheic keratosis in Uncle Cecile's room. So when you go out of this room and head down the hall, the next room on the left, you go down the stairs, or in other words, you go into the basement, basal layers. You go down the stairs. There's still light being let into this room. There's a window with sun shining through. And you have Effie Tinkett from Hunger Games. She's in here. And so we're talking about an ephilis, or a freckle. And she's working a production line. There's a single machine pumping out bottles. And the single machine represents one melanocyte. But it's just pumping out a ton of these bottles, which represents melanin. And they're smashing on the ground. Effie's not really good at this type of work. And they're smashing on the ground, and the pigment that's in them is getting all over the place. And so you've got an increase in pigment, but you do not have a linear increase in melanocytes. And this is not the mouth. Effie is an AVOX here. She's being punished for not helping the Capitol. So Effie, the AVOX, so it does not happen in your mouth. Neither does seborrheic keratosis, neither does keratocanthoma, and neither does the next one that we're going to be talking about, which is where we're headed next. So across the hall again, you hear the theme song from Friends playing. And you walk in, and there's an actor, Joey, and he's lending Ross some money. So actor lending, actinic lendigo. And Ross doesn't have his shirt on because he has some of these lesions on his arms, or on his shoulders, his back, and his hands. So he doesn't have a shirt on, he has these lesions on his hands, his back, and his shoulders. Why is Joey lending him money? Well, he is investing in some factories, some melanocyte factories. He has 3 or so, and he's buying 2 more, so he needs to have 5. And that so in other words, he's increasing the number of melanocytes, or the little factories. He's ramping that production up. And again, Joey and Ross, they can't talk to each other. They don't have mouths here, so this group still, we continue on. They don't have a mouth. They can't talk. They're just such good friends that they could just look at each other and know that Ross needed some money, and Joey answered. So just to back up real quick, so when I was talking about focal epithelial hyperplasia, or Hex disease, when you go through the igloo, instead of crossing a big barrier of thick cans to represent acantholysis, I'm going to have you go through a cold igloo and you get to some warm candles. And I'm going to have the candles represent acantholysis, just to make some continuity changes there and make sure I'm not getting confused with the other cans of things that represent, like keratocanthoma. So a little fix there. Okay, the next lesion does happen in the mouth. So it's right next to Effie's room. So we're further down the hall and on the left. This is the last room on the left before we bank right. And this is a dark room. There's no lights in this room. And we again walk through a doorway. So the first doorway you came in way back at the end, and the last one you come in, there you go through a doorway with a mouth and teeth and gums to represent the lips and gingiva. And then we also can have it on the palate. Okay, so this room has a security measure on the outside. It's dark on the inside. There's this mouth doorway, but you can't just go walking into this door. You need to paint your handprint instead of put your handprint on it. And that is going to be to represent the palette. So you grab this palette of paints and you paint your hand. If you do a good enough job, it's going to let you into this dark room. Now, you're not supposed to make out in this room, and you're not supposed to lay down with your girlfriend in this room. And so, if you laid down, you'd be on the floor. And so, melanic, we're talking about labial or oral, melatotic macules. And so, these do not happen on the floor of the mouth. So, you don't lay down on the floor, and you don't tongue your girlfriend in here. And so, it doesn't happen on the tongue, but it does happen on the lips, the gingiva, and the palate, and you have to walk through that to get into this room. They're not larger than 7 millimeters, so there's a ruler on the floor right next to this, or there's a ruler in the room, and there's a symmetrical dark circle that's on the wall, and it's can't be any larger than 7 millimeters. So there's a ruler on the wall that's showing how large the symmetrical circle is, and histologically it's going to look just like a freckle. That's why it's right next to Effie's room, which means that there's just going to be one little factory thing operating in the dark here. So we've got one melanocyte, but nobody's in here running it. It's dark, so these jars of melanin are just spilling onto the floor, and that's where there's just spilling, and that's where the pigment's coming from. Don't want to say floor because I don't want to confuse you that this can happen on the floor. It does not happen on the floor. It's always dark in this room, that's why it's dark. So these are not activated by the light, where the Ephelis in Effie's room, they are. She's got a window with the sun shining through. This is in the dark, so it can't happen. If they are growing or getting bigger, then it could be melanoma, and you'll want to get that looked at. But it's about impossible to biopsy everything.